Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 2KU Weekly Podcast. We are now almost halfway through this 2023 regular season as we finally cracked into October. On October 1st, 2023. This is the Week 6 episode of 2KU Weekly. Hello, everybody. We come to you after a action-packed Week 6 or Week 5 in preparation for Week 6 here. We have several headlines for you today. Starting off, we talked about the game from last night, a very controversial finish in this one as Georgia upsets LSU, nearly giving up a huge lead at the end of the game, but a controversial call is overturned, which gave Georgia a 3-point win in the score sheets. Colorado continues the curse of the number 7 this season as Texas A&M stuns them at home in overtime. Meanwhile, a number 22 ranked Penn State beat Illinois on the road, leading to the Illini's second loss in Champaign this season. In another Big Ten matchup, Michigan, who got upset while they were the number 1 team in the nation last season against Notre Dame, managed to get a win in South Bend this year to keep their hot streak going. And in the Battle of the Old Brass Spittoon, Indiana upset a ranked Michigan State to take back the rivalry trophy for the first time since 2021. Danny, any big stories for you this week?
Yeah, I think those were really big stories, especially Colorado. I think another big game for me would be Penn State upsetting Illinois. Penn State is off to an amazing start, and we'll talk a little bit more about them a little bit later.
Pig Bear?
It has to be the game last night. I was in the booth with you last night for that one, and I'm thinking that's not an interception. That's not an interception. I'm shocked there's no reviewer whatsoever on it. And then we get out to the game and we're looking at it, and the officials call that's not a catch. Imagine you're a Georgia fan sitting in the parking lot, you're packing up your stuff. It's about 20, 30 minutes after the game. Traffic's crazy, trying to get Atlanta or wherever you're from, and you see on your phone Georgia wins the football game. And imagine now you're an LSU fan back in Louisiana celebrating your win, and on the TV breaking game overturned. This has to be the most wildest sports moment I've ever seen.
It's up there with the Alabama-Florida State thing from last year's Music City Bowl, which caused a lot of controversy. We'll move directly into that game. We'll talk about the game we saw itself, and Georgia was running right out of the gates. They were scoring points like crazy. The offense was clicking. Quarterback Jarrett Fontaine made a case for himself in the Heisman race. As Georgia was off to an incredible start, and then you see that call happen. It was 17-0 when that happened in favor of the Bulldogs. The interception goes LSU's way, and for whatever reason, Georgia just can't compete in that matchup. LSU quickly clawed their way back, ended up getting the lead at the end of the game, 34-31. The final score stands at 34-31 for all of about 5 minutes, while the booths check the replay to make sure that was right, because the refs didn't call a review and no one challenged it, which is what we expected. We look back at it, and LSU's I believe it was a linebacker who attempted to make it. It bounced off a Georgia player's pads, and it looked like he scooped it off out of the ground, but it hit the ground before it went into his arms. That's an incompletion, and as such, Georgia should have kept the ball on that. I believe it was the second down there. There was no reason for the ball to be handed over to LSU, and this is another case, much like the Music City Bowl, where officiating ends up being an issue in an SEC game. And Danny, thoughts?
Yeah, it's like so embarrassing for the SEC to just have that happen. How in the world, especially in a pivotal call like that, where the game could be decided just like that, and you're not going to review it, you're not going to double check to make sure that it's correct. I question the SEC and its referee committee.
Certainly. Pig Bear, you had plenty of thoughts while we were talking about the stories itself, but you have anything more else you want to say here?
What? Yeah, I didn't believe it was a catch. I believe it was an interception, not a catch. Sorry. From the beginning, I wanted to tell you, called out of the field during that, but
It did
I'm
look.
still in disbelief.
It did look strange.
It looks very strange.
Georgia
The
heads.
angles,
Or continue.
the angles weren't great as I saw in the last.
The review angles weren't great. We did have to pull out the actual stream replay and look back at it. Georgia improves to 4-1. They'll play Tennessee on the road next week. As for LSU, now they've lost 2 straight, as it's called, with a loss previously to Texas. They take on Kentucky at home this week before they get a tough stretch against Alabama and Auburn coming up. The SEC now has no team without a loss this season, or only has one team without a loss. We'll talk about them a little later on in the show. But now we moved from the SEC to the Big 12. Where number 7 Colorado, the reigning Big 12 champs, head to College Station to take on the Texas A&M Aggies. They were favored pretty heavily in this game. We all picked the Buffs to take this game, but as it turns out, Texas A&M wasn't going to lie down so easily. They took a 13-0 lead. They took a 14-0 lead into this one. Colorado ended up having to tie it, but it was Texas A&M who got the first score and the defensive stop they needed to win in overtime. 17-10 the score in OT. The Texas A&M Aggies get the win. Danny?
Yeah, I was just shocked about Colorado and how inefficient their offense was that game. You would think that with how Texas A&M has been looking recently, that Colorado would seemed over them, but I get fucked.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, that was a shocker in College Station. I'm surprised Colorado, if we get into a second, didn't fall as far as I thought they would.
This is now the third team to hold the number 7 and lose. Illinois and TCU were both number 7 previous, and they ended up getting losses respectively to Missouri and Utah. To another top 25 upset, we head to North Carolina and Chapel Hill, where the Tar Heels ended up getting Maryland's traditional punch in the mouth game. 34-26, the Terps come into Chapel Hill and get the win. In Maryland, improving to 2 wins on the year. It looked certainly hopeless entering this game, but Maryland may have a swing back here. They play Duke in Miami, entering their bye in Week 8. As for North Carolina, things aren't getting any easier. They get Virginia Tech next week. Boy, Florida State they have on the road, as well as a neutral site game against South Carolina and a road game against Virginia before a Week 10 bye. Danny?
Yeah, North Carolina just got knocked, and big surprise for Maryland. They always manage to pull off some big upset throughout the year, whether that's against Florida State, Virginia Tech, or in this case, North Carolina. Wonder if Maryland will use this momentum to push themselves forward.
You would know coming from UCF last season, Danny. Pig Bear, your thoughts?
Yeah, Chapel Hill, obviously, you think North Carolina, you think basketball, but North Carolina football is no joke to be slack with. Maryland football showed, they could see, so they made them look like a joke there. But, that's unexpected. Maryland's, they're behind the sticks right now. They're 2-3, correct?
Yeah, both teams in this case are 2 and 3.
Yeah, they're behind the sticks. Both teams are now. But just hats off to Maryland. Great game. Keep that stuff up. Who knows?
We can head now to the Big East, where it really seems like anybody's game, except for Rhode Island, who still we're on an embarrassing winless streak, entering a matchup in Philadelphia against Villanova. But it took not 1, but 2, but 3 overtimes. We actually had a lot of 3 overtime games this season for Rhode Island to get past Villanova by 56-51. This is the highest scoring game Rhode Island has ever had as an FBS member since joining last season. The Rams are on a bye next week and then they get Boston College when they come back on week 7. The Villanova Wildcats get West Virginia on the road in a home game against Rutgers before a bye on week 8. Danny?
Yeah, Rhode Island is not looking really well, and I'm sure they'll be happy to join the American just so they can have a chance to win, even though it's less money, but still. But yeah, I was really quite surprised with how they performed throughout this game. And for Villanova, what happened? Villanova looked like they could have been a team to potentially play for or I believe it's the South Division they're in now. But who knows?
Villanova falling to 1-4 on the year. Pig Bear?
Yeah, that sucked for Villanova. You're one of these high lookers for the South Division now. You're 1-4. Things got to change in Philadelphia. Really, really low.
Staying in the Big East, let's head to an interdivision matchup between UConn and Rutgers. We went to this game last season. This was a big statement win for UConn, which ended up helping them push their way to an unbeaten regular season and a Peach Bowl appearance against Georgia Tech. The Huskies entered this game at 2-2. They managed to get a 33-26 win in Piscataway over the Scarlet Knights. The Huskies get Pittsburgh and before their bye in week 7. Rutgers, meanwhile, has a pretty easy road to the bye with Georgetown and Villanova, which should help them get back to 500 before they take on Pitt in week 8 and get a bye in week 9. Rutgers still looking out for that potentially dangerous matchup against West Virginia in week 12 that could decide that division. Danny?
Yeah, that it was a really good game for them. Sorry, that I was shocked at the way how both these teams have been performing this season. Both these teams were ranked in the top 25 in this start of the season. Here they are unranked. Only one of these teams could get some good momentum now.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, UConn. They have a crucial one here, and both teams got to get on track if they want to do anything with this season.
All right. Our next game returns us to the Big 12. I forgot to mention about Colorado and Texas A&M. Colorado has Kansas State and Missouri. Certainly no easy matchups there before their Week 8 bias. For Texas A&M, they play Oklahoma State on the road before a bye in Week 7. Staying in the Big 12 for Baylor and Missouri. The Baylor Bears are unbeaten so far, and they remain such with a 44-24 win over the Tigers, who had a promising start to the year, at 2-1, but have lost their last 2 straight, and now they face Nebraska and Colorado before a bye. Danny?
Yeah, that I remember we went to this game during the first season of 2KU, and both these teams looked really well, and I wonder if Missouri just had that one flash in the pan against Illinois, because they're not looking really that well since then.
Their only other win was against Troy out of the Sun Belt. Pig Bear?
Yeah, arch rivalry. Rivalry games can show a lot. Usually, sometimes the better team doesn't always win just because it's a rivalry. You get the extra motivation.
It was Baylor, Missouri.
Yeah. My bad. I thought you... Sorry.
But as for that...
Yeah. Good job to Baylor. My bad.
Good catch.
Long day.
Elegance there. Let's head out west to the Mountain West. Still anyone's game, and there's a clear-cut group of favorites entering this section of the year. San Diego State is among them. They're number 19 in the country, but they ended up getting a test they'd end up failing on the road against Utah State. 28-13. It is the Aggies who get a win and have now won 4 straight. They get a bye this week before they head on their gauntlet 3 straight games against TCU, BYU, and Utah. That BYU game being on the road. Though still, I think this Utah State team is probably in good hands. They have a potential to win at least 2 games going forward. As such, they probably might be in their first bowl berth in quite some time. Meanwhile, San Diego State shouldn't fret. They have their first loss of the year, but they still have plenty of winnable games coming up. But it's certainly not going to be easy with a feisty New Mexico team on their doorstep in Week 6. They play Colorado State Week 7 before a Week 8 bye. Danny, your thoughts on the Aztecs and the Aggies?
Yeah, that that I was shocked with Utah State, and Utah State's looking really well. They're 4-1 this season. They are performing pretty surprisingly well, and for San Diego State, it's not something you want, especially when you're looking forward to joining the Pac-12. So you're not going to get any easy wins over there.
One of the most competitive conferences in all of college football. Pig Bear?
Yeah, that is not good. I mean, you're going to the Conference Champions for Pete's sake.
The Conference of Champions.
Conference of Champions.
You got to add an extra H for emphasis.
You can't be losing to Colorado. Utah State. Oh my gosh, I'm off it. I'm gonna go get back alert.
You need some caffeine in your system, probably, to keep yourself sharp here. We'll move on now back to the Big Ten again. And if we're talking about the Mountain West being up for grabs, the Big Ten is extremely competitive this year. But I think this is where we start seeing the best teams separate themselves from the rest of the pack. And this was a huge game last year. Michigan, remember, was number 1 in the nation when they hosted Notre Dame, a Notre Dame team who hit them in the mouth with a huge upset. Michigan was not having that. They get their revenge in South Bend, 20-13 the final, as they beat the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This is the second loss for Notre Dame on the season, while Michigan improves to 4-1. Michigan gets Penn State on the road, which might be one of the toughest games you could possibly imagine to follow up a road game against Notre Dame. Notre Dame themselves has Michigan State in a battle for the megaphone, as well as a road game against Illinois before a Week 8 bye. Danny, how do you feel this impacts the Big Ten championship race?
Notre Dame looked like could have been potentially a team to win it, but unfortunately Notre Dame just couldn't do it. And what I'm gonna need a question is, does Notre Dame have enough resilience to get through the game? And for Michigan, they have a really tough stretch of games. They have, let me just get that schedule opened up real quick. Just give me 1 second. Come on, load. Here we go. That Michigan, they played against Notre Dame, played at Penn State, home against Michigan State, bye week, and then Northwestern and at Iowa. A lot of tricky games for them to go through. So we got to see how they perform.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, I'll just say if Michigan, where they're ranked right now, they're playing Notre Dame this week, they'd lose. But
certainly that curse number 7. We'll get to that in a moment. Continue.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. This is as has been noted. This is the first year the Big Ten will have no divisions, which means that these two teams would still be in the hunt, regardless of divisional tiebreakers, as it's just the top 2 teams who will be playing for the Big Ten championship. Let's return to the Mountain West one more time for number 6 TCU. They saw that number 7 curse themselves when they lost to Utah early in the year. That's their only loss so far, but a UNLV team came into town that gave them quite a challenge. A 46-38 final, the most points that TCU has led up all year, and their closest final score since that loss to Utah earlier in the year. The Horned Frogs improved to 4-1 so far this season. As for UNLV, they're hardly treading water, even though they're 2-3. They have potential to make a bowl game if they get some sneaky wins in the future. They play Dave's show on the road in Orlando next week, while TCU has a road matchup with BYU. Danny?
Yeah, that TCU's looked really good since that Kansas State loss. So I'm sure or TCU might be looking forward to, but they have a really tough game this week. So gotta see what they're doing for UNLV. They may be able to get to a bowl game. They just need to make sure they play their cards correctly because when you have games like at Dave Show, Wyoming at home, Colorado State, New Mexico, surprisingly, at BYU versus Nevada versus Utah, not gonna be easy.
It's hard to get 4 wins in that stretch. Big Bear?
Could potentially make a bowl.
Yeah, back to this UNLV thing. Dave showed no slouch team to play. That's a game to watch this week.
All right, one more game to wrap us up in our scores from Week 5. How about Oregon State, who's had a horrible season this year, still managing to put on a show as they hosted USC. It wasn't a win for the Beavers. USC got the win 23-20, but they kept it close and proved that this Beaver team still has fight. At 0-5, the Beavers take on Arizona State this week. The Sun Devils are a one-loss team. As for the Trojans at 4-1, they have a bye this week, but they come back Week 7 against a ranked Oregon. Danny, your thoughts here?
Yeah, Oregon State, it's a shocker how much they're slipping. Like, they're keeping all their games close, and it's a real big shocker of how close a lot of these games are. Like 26-22 against Texas Tech, 23-20 against USC. It's like they have chances to win. Seems like they just can't. I mean, of course, some blowouts, but you don't want to talk about those.
They're just unable to capitalize for a lot of games. Pig Bear?
They're keeping these games close, which means they've got to strike some. They've got to pick.
I will say, yeah, it's kind of a pendulum they seem to be swinging. It's like close game, blowout, close game, blowout. They're back on a close game. You hope it's not a blowout against Arizona State this week. For sure. Before we take a look at our top 25, I'm going to run down each of the conferences and their current standings and see where they've changed from last week. In the ACC, Virginia Tech still has a comfortable lead at 5-0. They're 2-0 in conference play so far. Duke picked up a conference win. They're sitting at 3-2. Clemson is 4-1. A lot of 2-2s and 2 and 3s. Virginia is sitting at 2 and Virginia and South Carolina are both 2-2 with 2 and 3s from North Carolina, Florida State, and Maryland as well. Looking at the American Conference, the top 2 teams are still the same out of conference before conference play begins in full for this 8-team conference. Charlotte, the only team who's played a conference game so far, is in the lead. They're 3-2 on the year, but Jacksonville State, who was off this week, is still 4-0, entering a game against an FCS team in Alabama A&M next week. They'll keep an eye on lurkers like Eastern Kentucky and Kennesaw State to potentially throw a wrench in some of their plans. As for the Big East North is still led by Boston College, who's 3-1 on the year. We have 2 3-2s, though, in their rearview mirror. 2-0 in conference are Syracuse and UConn. Still in the hunt there. UMass is 1-1 in spite of a 1-3 record. Looking at the other division, it's currently Pitt, who is tied with West Virginia. Both are 2-0 in conference. The Mountaineers had the better overall record as Pitt was off last week. Georgetown is still within striking distance at 1-1. Into the Big Ten, the top 2 teams currently are Penn State and Indiana, though Wisconsin and Michigan are tied with IU for that second spot. All 3 are 1 loss or fewer. All those teams have 1 conference win, and all of them are 4-1 out of conference. Also 4-1, though, a few spots down is Iowa. Purdue is 3-1 without playing a conference game. As for the Big 12, also without divisions this season, Baylor is unbeaten, as is Oklahoma State. The Bears have 2 in-conference games, so they're naturally a step ahead. Texas A&M and Texas Tech are sitting at 3-2. Nebraska is 4-1. Oklahoma, rather, is 3-1. Colorado is 4-1. Bit of a misslip there. I I would also not write off K-State, who is still potentially a contender at 3-2. Into the Conference USA, the USA East is incredibly stacked. UCF 5-0, Cincinnati's 5-0. 4-1 campaigns for Louisville and Liberty so far. UAB did slip to 3-2, but they're still a dangerous team in this division. That's for certain. Looking at the West, it's starting to be clear who's taking control. That being SMU, who's sitting at 4-1. Houston is 3-2, and they have a potential to make a big run going forward into their Week 9 bye. Arkansas is 2-2. The rest of the division has 1 win combined. Quick look at the independents. Army is 4-1. Dave Show is 3-2. Colgate is sitting at 500 at 2-2. Into the Ivy League, it's Dartmouth who currently holds the lead for record at 3-2. Several 2-3 records, including last year's champion Columbia, certainly not out of the race there as they enter conference play coming up. In the MAC East is led by Akron, who's 4-1 this season. Miami of Ohio and Kent State are both 3-2, as is Buffalo. Into the MAC West, Eastern Michigan, the only team with one of only 2 teams with the conference win so far. They're 2-3 on the year. 3-2 is Western Michigan. The only one-loss team in the division is third place Northern Illinois, who's sitting at 3-1. Into the Missouri Valley Conference we go. The Missouri Valley East still heavily dominated by Southern Illinois, who is 4-1 on the year. Chicago is at 2-2. Illinois State falls to 2-3, as does Western Illinois. On the other side of the conference, 2 4-1 teams, both of the Dakotas, North and South Dakota State, are 4-1. Northern Iowa sitting with a winning record at 3-2. The Mountain West is incredibly stacked. New Mexico has the best record in conference, though, at 5-0. They're tied with Utah, who's 5-0, and Boise State, who is also 5-0. For the 4-1 teams, that's San Diego State at 4-1. That's TCU at 4-1. And that's now Utah State joining them at 4-1. But BYU is at 4-0. They might be knocking on a ranking sometime in the future. Into the Pac-10 we go. Their last season as a 10-team unit. Stanford, the only unbeaten so far. They're 5-0. The only unbeaten remaining, rather. 5-0, 2-0 in conference. Arizona State is also 2-0 in conference. Could the Sun Devils be a sneaky team in the Pac-10? Oregon is 4-1 as well, as is USC. As for potential dark horses, Washington State is 3-2, and UCLA is sitting at 2-3, but potentially has room for a big run later in the year. Into the SEC East is led by Florida now at 4-1 with a 2-1 record in conference, though Georgia is sitting at 4-1 as well, as is Vanderbilt at 4-1, weirdly enough, and Georgia Tech is also a one-loss team entering Week 6. The only unbeaten in the SEC is Mississippi State, off to one of their best starts of the season in history since they added the divisions, at least. They're 5-0 to start the year. Their one conference win came last week with a upset win in Tuscaloosa over the Crimson Tide. Their first win in Tuscaloosa since 1999. LSU now falls to 3-2 with a conference loss. Auburn, though, is projected to be the favorite in the conference at 4-1. Also sitting at 3-2 is the ineligible Alabama. Tulane falls to 2-3, and somehow still the winning record is Ole Miss. Into the SoCon, the CASN's territory. Currently one of the strongest teams is 4-0 Old Dominion, who's 3-0 in conference play. Also in contention are Washington and Lee, William and Mary, and James Madison. On the other side of the conference, Georgia Southern is sitting pretty at 3-2, though Appalachian State is by a wide margin the best team in terms of record, sitting at 5-0. Western Carolina is split at 2-2 behind them. Over to the Southland. The Southland East has yet to find its true top team. Stephen F. Austin is 2-0 in conference play. It's likely we see them pull off more wins as conference play continues. Their 2 losses came in their non-conference games. Southeastern Louisiana, though, is their thorn in their side, sitting at 3-2 as well. Abilene Christian looking decent at 2-3, though it's pretty clear that they're out of reach for that division as of this moment, as Sam Houston sits at 5-0, And even Harden-Simmons is contending at 3-2. Into the Sun Belt we go. Sun Belt East looking much closer than we ended up expecting. Even with a 5-0 Coastal Carolina, FAU is knocking on the door. These two teams play each other in Week 11. And then Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee are both at 2-3. Behind them in the Sun Belt West, it's currently an easy race, at least for the top two teams. Arkansas State is 4-0. South Alabama is 4-1 so far this season. The best start the Jaguars have ever had since joining the FBS. And we wrap with the Western Athletic Conference. The WAC Mountain Division has Louisiana Tech at 4-1, tied with New Mexico State for second. The leader is 5-0 UTSA. New Mexico State has 2 wins in conference, which will surely help them in the standings, though. As for the West, as for the Pacific Division, currently tied for the lead would be, in terms of overall record at least, is Pacific and CSU Fullerton, who are both 4-1. Potential contenders who not have as many wins would of course be San Jose State, Hawaii, and Nevada, who look to be the best 3 teams going forward. And that wraps your conference previews so far. Now we're going to head over to our top 25. This is the first week we'll be going over with our computer rankings, which will be added to the calculations. Danny, you want to explain how these work?
Danny?
I think Danny is actually muted. We'll hold.
Sorry about that.
All right.
That the way how the computers decides based on who rank on which way it ranks, based on their overall record, their average place ranking within the entirety of the top 25 throughout the entire season, how they rank up when it comes to average offense, average defense, and then their points per game. Of course, the one that I gave the most priority is actually their average AP ranking throughout the season, which includes outside top 25 votes.
The votes are still weighed in favor of the 3 of us who have been voting.
Yep.
Voting.
Currently, Joey, myself, and Victor, we get basically like an extra vote, and the computer stays as just their one individual.
But you will notice a couple minor changes because of the new system, which will hopefully be shaken up by the end of the year. However, the top 5 remains unchanged. Oklahoma State still at number 1. Virginia Tech staying at number 2. Boise still at 3. Stanford's at number 4. And Baylor still remains at number 5. TCU as well remains at number 6. But now a new team to fall into number 7 is Michigan, jumping 5 spots after a win over Notre Dame and some losses ahead of them to make up the number 7 spot. At number 8 is UCF, continuing to climb the ladder for the highest position in school history. Behind them is Georgia Tech, who falls a spot, but still remains a top 10 team. Oregon jumps a spot into the top 10. Surprisingly, I thought Georgia would have jumped into the top 10 as well, but apparently they just missed the cut. Georgia does jump 5 spots, though, into number 11. Number 12 is LSU, who falls 3 after the game against the Bulldogs. Colorado falling 6 spots from number 7 down to number 13 after the loss to Texas A&M. Number 14 is Clemson, who jumps 3 spots from last week. And now hopping up to number 15 is Coastal Carolina, the highest spot the Sun Belt has ever had in the top 25. Number 16 is Utah, who does slip ever so slightly after their loss, they do slip ever so slightly, even though they won this week. But regardless, they remain a top 25 team and potentially might have some ranked matchups in their future. Penn State hops up to number 17 with the poll. Number 18 is Auburn, one of the better teams out of the SEC West. Number 19 is USC following that. Number 20 is Cincinnati, deemed the second best team out of the Conference USA. Number 21 will be Boston College. Number 22 is Michigan State, who fell after a loss to Indiana. We didn't mention that, but we didn't mention that in our scores, but it feels like worth mentioning here. Number 23, returning to the top 25 this week, is Florida. After a win this week, I believe. They take on Georgia Tech this week. Number 24, staying in the top 25 only barely, is San Diego State. Sitting there after their loss to Utah State. Number 25, returning to the top 25, edging out North Carolina and Illinois, is Louisville, giving the Conference USA 3 ranked teams. I believe for the first time since UCF, Southern Miss, and Memphis were all ranked at the same time. Others receiving votes this week are Arizona State, Mississippi State, San Jose State, Northern Illinois, Sam Houston, Appalachian State, Jacksonville State, South Dakota State, Nebraska, UTSA, Old Dominion, Southern Illinois, and North Carolina. What are you guys' thoughts on the top 25, Danny?
Yeah, the computer had some very spicy picks that it did for its top 25, which that's how Jacksonville State and South Dakota State ultimately got some votes. But it does seem like it does help give a little bit of some balance within it and cause a little bit of some chaos. I'm surprised San Diego State is still ranked. As a matter of fact, I don't think they've moved at all. But surprising to see them here.
A bit of insight into the chaos that the computer can cause. They had Coastal Carolina at 6 in the top 25. Unbelievable, certainly. Pigbear, your thoughts on the top 25 this week?
Artificial intelligence is going to ruin all our lives. No, I'm kidding. But does the 7 curse continue with Michigan this week?
We'll talk about that with our games of the week here. We'll get to that later. It's not, I don't know if it's artificial intelligence in this case. It's more so my dreaded foe in math. We now move on. We're going to take our first look, going from math to people, at our Heisman watch. This is a thing we used to do much more frequently, but now we get our first crop of potential Heisman finalists this season. The list, of course, is fluid, but these are a couple of players that definitely stick out as of this point into the year. We start with 2 Oregon players in your top 3. The favorite, of course, being Terrence Noel, the running back out of Oregon. He was a favorite last season before his injury, and he ended up a finalist in 2021. Terrence Noel, the real deal there. It would be an interesting thing to see him win because that would mean we would have 3 straight running backs winning the Heisman Trophy, with Trey Justice and Warren Hodgson doing it prior. The top-ranked quarterback is sitting at number 2. That's Travis Heller out of Clemson. Still remaining a very impressive quarterback for the Tigers in spite of a loss they had to LSU. Andrew Burnett out of Oregon was definitely a dazzler this season, as he always has been. Alan Bonner, the top player out of Oklahoma State, the running back, is pretty high on there. Jarrett Fontaine's stock rised pretty high after the win over Georgia and how he flashed his talents there. The only wide receiver on this board comes to us from UCF. That's Aaron Herron, who is a big key player in the game against Louisville we saw on stream. Mark Buchanan comes to us courtesy of Wisconsin, a team who hasn't reached our radar just yet, but certainly will be in consideration soon. Courtney Davis, the quarterback out of LSU, follows that. Another minor school we meet. Joe Reed out of Coastal Carolina, the star quarterback, has been one of the best players the Shots has ever known. And then we wrap up with the Big East star David Cole out of Boston College. You guys have any big thoughts for favorites in this crowd?
Heller for Heisman. I'm kidding. But I think Heller would have a good chance if he can turn the tide of the season completely into the driver's seat in the ACC. That's going to take a lot, especially as you face Virginia Tech in an event where you win it and Virginia Tech does their job in Virginia Tech. You play them twice. You only have to beat them once to win the ACC, but beating them twice would be good.
Danny?
Yeah, that I hope is UCF continues to go undefeated and that that Heron continues to be healthy and continues to win because if UCF can finish the season undefeated, I think he might have a really good shot of being a Heisman.
No, zero bias from us in those two ones.
Certainly. I do like Noel. He is a senior this season, and he's been in consideration for years to potentially nab the Heisman on his way out of the door for the NFL. And now we're going to finally move on to our discussions of the top games coming up this week. In week 6, we're going to start with a weekday game. Our first games on Wednesday will be this week this season. Well, our first game we highlight is a Thursday game, one of the best games out of the Sun Belt. Florida Atlantic at 3-2 heads down to Mobile to take on South Alabama, who's 4-1 on the season. The South Alabama Jaguars are favored by 7 in this matchup. I'll let you guys pick first this week, and I'll give my pick before we move on to the next game. Danny, who do you have in this one?
As much as I would like for the Owls to win, give me South Alabama. I think they have enough momentum, and I think they are excited, and I'm sure they are happy to be getting any kind of recognition. I'm sure they are willing to go beyond the limits.
Pig Bear?
I have to agree there. Alumnus and donor Samuel Brown, more commonly known as RBT, should be at this game. He should get them hype. South Alabama plus the points.
I'm picking Florida Atlantic, actually, to win this one. A sluggish start from the Owls, but Florida Atlantic has historically been one of the best teams in the Sun Belt, and even with slow starts, they've managed to pick up momentum later, and I think the perfect game to get that swing in their favor would be a huge road win against South Alabama in this matchup. Moving on, we head to a Big East matchup on Friday. The Pittsburgh Panthers at 2-2 taking on the UConn Huskies. In Stores, the Huskies are favored by 7 in this matchup. They played last year. UConn won 29-12. Danny?
Yeah, I'm going to say give me UConn to win this. It's going to be close. And as you said, the last time they played was UConn did win it 29-12. But give me UConn to win this. I think they could potentially win this game. Close. Real close.
Pig Bear?
I'm going to go with the upset here. Give me the Pitt Panthers. I think they'd roll on pretty well after this game.
All right, interesting. We'll now move on to another Friday game. This one out of the SEC. Tulane had a good start to the season. They've fallen down to 2-3 after 2 straight conference losses. They head on the road to take on a white-hot Vanderbilt, who sits at 4-1. Tulane won the last matchup between these two teams last season. The Green Wave won 37-13, but this time it heads to Nashville. Tulane is favored by 3 in this game. Danny?
If you want to know how impressive this turnaround is for Vanderbilt, last season they only had 2 wins. They're at 4 now. I'm sure they're going to be excited for this, but they're going to go up to 5. Give me Vanderbilt to win.
Pig Bear?
Vanderbilt forgot the lyrics and fight song. Yeah, Vanderbilt wins this one.
Vanderbilt would improve to 5-1. Not so fast. I'm picking Tulane to win this to get back to 500. A much-needed win for the Green Wave that they get here on Friday night. Up next, we have Pig Bears Clemson Tigers heading on the road to take on Miami. A Miami team who, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, has been awful this season. They're sitting at 1-4. Clemson is at 4-1 on the year with a conference win. Miami is 0-2 in conference play. Clemson won the last matchup 23-17. The Tigers are favored by 4.5, which I think is a little generous. I'll just say my score off the bat here. Give me Clemson by 1 million. Danny?
Yeah, give me Clemson to win. This one shouldn't be close at all. I'm sure it's going to be good for recruitment, but give me Clemson.
This one's 4.5. I thought it was 14.
It says 4.5 here at least. Do we even need to ask you for this one?
Yeah, y'all need to ask me. Clemson by 25.
Texas A&M is off some momentum after their win over Colorado. Can that translate to their matchup in Stillwater against the number 1 Oklahoma State Cowboys? Probably not, because last time they played, Oklahoma State won in their building 62-20. But it'll probably provide some fun highlights at least. Oklahoma State wins big here, Danny.
I'm sure that Texas A&M will keep it close for like maybe a quarter, maybe a half. Then I'm sure afterward Oklahoma State will just run with the ball and beat them.
Big Bear?
Oh boy, a madman would pick Texas A&M here to win. Da 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 da. No, I can't. Oklahoma State wins by 2. Oklahoma State wins close.
Close. It's hard to win close against. It's hard to keep it close against Oklahoma State. We now move on to UCF and Cincinnati. Have we not gone already 2 weeks prior? We would have gone to this game as well, though we have some other stuff on our hands. The number 8 Knights are 5-0. The number 19 Bearcats are 5-0. UCF is favored by 2 in this matchup. The Knights won the last matchup 27-24 last season. Interesting, this is a noon game. I thought this would have been played a bit later, but give me UCF to remain unbeaten. Danny?
Yeah, give me the Knights to win as well, though I do think it's going to be really close. This is one of big rivalry games between the two, and I'm sure it's going to be really loud in Cincinnati, but give me UCF to win this one close.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, I got UCF going up to Nippert Stadium getting a win. Fun name to say Nippert.
Be careful.
Yeah, I know.
It'll certainly be a great future matchup in the Big East coming soon, as they'll both be Big East South members. Moving forward to a SEC matchup, number 17 Auburn taking on an unranked Mississippi State in Starkville. This could decide the division looking back on it. The Tigers are 4-1. The Bulldogs are 5-0, both with conference wins. Auburn is favored by 5 on the road. They won the last matchup between these two teams, 30-27. And then, Danny, your thoughts?
This is going to be a really tough game because both these teams are doing really well. However, I think the cowbells will ring loud, and I think Mississippi State will get the upset.
Interesting. Pig Bear?
War damn eagle. Auburn plus the points.
I think I do have to agree there. I will take Auburn plus the points as well in this matchup. Auburn looks like they're going to be a big contender in the Big East, or not the Big East, the SEC West division. They're 4-1.
Big East.
That'll be the Big East.
Southeast Alabama.
I'll have to send Alabama to the Big East in the future.
Yeah, I know.
You probably keep hearing about it every week of the year. We'll just get this over with. Texas, Oklahoma. It's certainly a big matchup. It's a very important historical rivalry, and certainly, even in spite of these two teams not really amounting to much in terms of record, Texas is 2-2. Oklahoma is 3-1. Texas won the last matchup last season, 36-27. I actually thought Oklahoma won it, but I guess it was a Longhorn win. Texas is favored by 2 points in this game. Danny, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is one of those rivalry games where you can just disregard the records because it's going to be a ball in there. But give me Oklahoma to win this game. I think Oklahoma has enough to potentially win this.
And Pig Bear?
All right. They'll start claiming their back. Texas beat Oklahoma.
That Texas win would get them to 3-2, but they got a long road to go before they would be back in that situation.
I know.
Colorado is number 13. They just came off their first loss of the year and their only conference loss. They're favored by 16 points as they welcome Kansas State. K-State's 3-2. They have a conference loss. Colorado won last season 27-24. I'll get my pick out of the way here, but I would not dare sleep on this Kansas State team. I think K-State gets enough wins. They potentially keep in the running for the Big 12 championship. I think K-State gets an upset win in Boulder. It's certainly not going to be, even if Colorado wins, it's certainly not going to be a 16-point game. Give me K-State in an upset, Danny.
It's a really tough game, but because the game is in Boulder, I'm gonna pick Colorado to win it real close. It is a big rivalry game between two, but give me Colorado to win it close.
Big Bear?
Yeah, I think that spread's a little ridiculous. Let me go Colorado by about 6 or 7.
From the Big 12 to the Big 10, the battle for the Megaphone Trophy. Michigan State taking on Notre Dame. The Spartans won 44-12 last season, en route to a Big East or a Big 10 championship. I keep saying Big East today. Notre Dame is 3-2 and 1-1 in Big 10 play. Michigan State now 3-2 with a conference loss. The Spartans are favored by 5.5 in this matchup. They'll give me Notre Dame to win and improve to 2-1 in an upset. Danny?
Yeah, give me Michigan State to. I think Michigan State is gonna win this one close. It's gonna be a lot closer than last season's matchup, but yeah, I think the Spartans will take home the megaphone.
Pig Bear?
Last week was a bit fluky. Michigan State wins plus the points.
That would put Notre Dame at 0-2 against teams in Michigan. Back to the SEC, a ranked matchup between number 9 Georgia Tech and number 23 Florida. The Yellow Jackets are 3-1 following a bye. They're 1-0 in conference play. As for Florida, they're 2-1 in conference play and 4-1 overall. Tech is favored by 3.5. They won the last matchup 34-17, but it's in the swamp against a ranked Florida. And this is a Georgia Tech team who has proven if you find that one weakness, which would be stopping this offense from making moves, it's easy to beat this Georgia Tech team. I think Florida wins this one big as a huge statement win to keep them in the race for the SEC East. Danny?
Give me Florida to win this. The swamp is gonna be loud. It's gonna be ruckus. It's the CBS game of the week for them, so give me Florida to win it.
Pig Bear?
Not so fast, my friends. Georgia Tech's Georgia Tech, and they continue to be Georgia Tech. Go Jackets. Jackets win.
Now to the Mountain West. We have two Mountain West matchups highlighted for you. Number 6, TCU is 4-1. They're still fighting for a potential national championship spot. They're taking on BYU on the road. The BYU Cougars are undefeated this season. They haven't played in conference yet. TCU won 44-37 last time these two teams met in 2021. Though this season, the Horned Frogs are still favored, this time by 10 points. Rather than, I believe, the 7 they won by last time. TCU was nowhere near as good in 2021 as they were last season or this. I think TCU does win this one and hands BYU their first loss of the season. Danny?
Yeah, I think TCU will win this one, but I think it's going to be really close because it's in Provo. Both teams are really well, but TCU by close.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, give me TCU in a close one.
I have good show of how much of a barn burner this Mountain West conference is. New Mexico is 5-0. One of the first. This is probably the best start in team history for the Lobos. A win against San Diego State this week would make them bowl eligible. They would be in a very elite club of bowl eligible squads with a win here. They get San Diego State though this week. The number 24 Aztecs have had some of their luster wear off. They're 4-1 with a loss to Utah State. Last year, San Diego State won 48-7. This is a very different New Mexico team, though. San Diego State is favored by 18. I think the Aztecs do win, but New Mexico State keeps it close. Danny?
Yeah, give me. I'm actually going to think that New Mexico wins it close. It's in New Mexico. They're 5-0. I think New Mexico might find some way to win this one.
Pig Bear?
Jesse, very, very on topic, but give me San Diego State.
Uh-huh.
Got to get your job done here if you're in the Pac-12. Well, Pac-10 right now, but soon be Pac-12.
It will be the Pac-12 when they arrive. We're now going to hand it off to Danny V as he breaks down Dave Show's game of the week here. Take it away.
Yeah. This time, UNLV travels on the road to Dave Show. Dave loves to play against his Vegas teams, considering he's from there. But I'm sure Dave will be happy for this game. It's gonna be a fun match between the two in prime time. And give me the Truckers to win the game. The last time they played, Dave Show won 21-0. That game was in Vegas. This time, I think it's gonna be around 42-7.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, I give you Dave Show winning here. This should be a comfortable Dave Show win.
Give me UNLV, or not, don't give me UNLV, but give me Dave Show, but close. It's interesting seeing what this UNLV team has shown. They got 23 points against San Diego State. They kept it close for a while against Hawaii in their opener, and they even held TCU within 10 points. This UNLV team is sneaky good. And I think they could cause a scare later in the season, and this might be a potential scare, another potential scare for Dave's show this season. I do think the Truckers though pull it off. And now from there, we're gonna hand it off to Pig Bear as he'll break down the top two of the top teams in the SoCon broken down. It's the CASN game of the week. Take it away, Pig Bear.
All right, 7 p.m. live from Statesboro, Georgia. We have the 4-0, undefeated in SoCon play, undefeated in regular play. Old Dominion Monarchs head to Statesboro to play on the ever-present force, but kind of waning outside the conference. The 3-2 and 2-0 in conference Georgia Southern Eagles. Old Dominion is a 2.5-point favorite, and I'm gonna have to say I think Old Dominion gets it out here.
Danny?
I think Old Dominion to win this game. I believe Old Dominion, they're looking really well. They're coming off a bye. They're rested, and I'm sure they're excited to go down to Georgia and maybe knock out the Eagles.
I couldn't agree with you more. Old Dominion looks very exciting. I think they're held close because of that Georgia Southern defense. It's going to be a low-scoring affair, I think, but Old Dominion pulls it out. As that wraps up all of our scores, we got one more left for our 2KU Game of the Week. You know, I've given a lot of points and a lot of picks to the road team. It's going to be hard. It's going to be extremely hard to do that here. Number 7, Michigan, is 4-1, 1-0 conference. Their one loss came at a neutral site against Stanford. And they're heading on the road to one of the most hostile environments in the nation, Happy Valley, to take on Penn State. The Penn State Nittany Lions are 5-0 with a win in conference play. That win coming against a ranked Illinois. Boy, Penn State reinvigorated by some key transfers and a new hire at head coach. The Nittany Lions are a scary team to face at home. This is their traditional whiteout game. And it seems like some magical stuff tends to happen at these types of games. Penn State hoping to return to national prominence, and this could be the game to do it. I think that the curse of the number 7, which has affected Illinois, TCU, and Colorado before them, affects Michigan here as they get their second loss. I think Michigan loses to Penn State in Happy Valley. Danny?
This game is a coin flip. Penn State, they are looking re-energized, they're rejuvenated. Whiteout at home, which historically the whiteout has been one of the most tough environments to play at, where dreams come to die. And if I'm gonna need to do the coin flip, give me the Lions to win this one close, really, really close.
All right, Pig Bear, send us home. Who do you got?
All right. The curse of the number 7. Number 7. The whiteout. That's all well and good. I think Michigan's the better team. But it's the whiteout. But I still think Michigan has the edge. And some couple of plays go Michigan's way, and I think they win this game close. Michigan gets the upset.
It would be kind of poetic how Michigan's season got derailed by a big ranked game at home, that they get back on track with a big ranked game on the road against an unbeaten Penn State. Don't forget to tune in on Saturday for that game on the channel. Thank you all for watching tonight's stream of the podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Of course, we're heading back next week for another episode. Hope you tune in for that. Thank you all for watching, and so long from the 2KU.